In this video, I'm hoping to make a landscape painting inspired by a visit to Saraki in Iwate prefecture in Japan. This area is the hometown of my wife's mother's side of the family, so I am very lucky to get a tour of the area, particularly the area around my wife's grandma's house. This view of the valley is a favorite of my wife's aunt, so I was inspired to make a painting about it. While traveling around Japan, I couldn't help but think of Hokusai, the great artist, and I thought about how he might have seen these landscapes and been inspired to make his own art. I began to search for examples of Hokusai's woodcuts that I thought exhibited the spirit of the subject matter that I had in mind. I found a lot of great color palettes in Hokusai's 36 views of Mount Fuji, and there were several prints that would have made a great reference for this project. My goal wasn't to create an accurate depiction of reality, but it was more to capture the spirit and the essence of some of Hokusai's work. The color scheme I settled on is actually an image of a waterfall, which is a little bit off from being a valley, but I really like the way that color and shape are used in this image. And in Japanese historic ukiyo-e samples, there's often a range in quality. I picked a sample which had colors that I liked. I then spent some time thinking about color and shape relationships between the Hokusai landscape and my own photograph that I would be using for reference. I also simplified the color palette of my reference material to 6 or 7 colors with which I would be using for the painting. For this painting, I am using golden acrylics, I am using primary cyan, yellow, and magenta for all of my hues, and I am using black and white as well. I have also decided to pre-mix all of my paint, and as I produce each color, I am making a test swatch, and then I am also saving the paint in an airtight container. Pre-mixing my paint will help me focus on the painting at hand, as well as allowing me to jump back and forth between different layers of paint. With acrylic paint, you have to worry about the paint drying out, so using a container helps give you a save point and saves you from that dry time. When I paint with acrylics, I like to start with light colors and then I work my way up to dark colors. The lighter colors can serve as an underpainting as you flesh out your composition. And while you are painting, make sure you are using a brush that is appropriate to the application. In this case, I'm using a filbert, it's actually my favorite kind of brush, and then also a small flat brush for the details. There are a lot of options for brushes, so just find some that work well for your painting style. Also, as you work, make sure you step back and take a look at your image to get a sense of how the composition is coming together. And for this painting, I am taking inspiration from Hokusai's color scheme, but I am finding my own way to use it for my own landscape painting. I realized that my image is a little different from his, so I am reinterpreting it in my own way. But in doing so, I am hoping to capture the mood of the color expression of that work. As I work my way through the painting, I am looking carefully at my reference photo and I'm thinking about which colors can be placed in certain areas to create points of emphasis. As I paint gradients inspired by the prints themselves, I am keeping paint wet so that I can mix them together effectively. For this style of landscape painting, I'm also going to incorporate different kinds of brush strokes so I can capture some of the textures of the landscape. I am thinking about where to incorporate brush strokes so that the color and the texture can best activate the pictorial plane. By using color contrasts of hue, saturation, value, and in general warm and cool, we are able to activate parts of the picture and create areas of interest as well as depth of space. My hope for this painting is not to create a photorealistic image, but to create a convincing impression and to also capture depth of field and move the viewer through the space using color contrasts. In the foreground, I try to incorporate as many color contrasts as possible. As we move back into the midground and background, the color contrasts decrease. I am also using perspective, scale, and overlapping to create convincing pictorial space. As I am finishing up my painting, I use my darker values to reinforce the most important parts of the composition. I like to then come back through and add any other important details that might elevate the work. Ultimately, value relationships present in your reference palette need to also be incorporated along with the value relationships present in your intended image.